Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, and we've got a beer that I think will be very interesting today. I enjoyed the kind of last incarnation of this beer, if it is correct to say that actually, but this is another collaboration beer between a Swedish brewery and a formerly Danish gypsy brewery who I guess are probably now more American rather than anything else, but I'm very curious to see how this particular beer turns out. So for the Swedish side of things, we're going to head up towards Gothenburg, Göteborg, you should say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital pretty much, as I've told you on many an occasion, and we're having another beer from Poppels Bryggeri, and this one is the new iteration, if you like, of the Swedish Fika. This one is called the Swedish Fika Biscotti Break Cinnamon Bun, and it's another collaboration with Evil Twin Brewing, who of course started out as a gypsy brewery in Copenhagen in Denmark, but now are based over in Brooklyn in New York in America. So this one is a 12% Russian Imperial Stout with coffee, vanilla, cinnamon and cardamom added to it. So yeah, should be really pretty good actually. This is yet another beer that was released through the Små Partiers in Systembolaget on the 4th of October 2019, and it's the second in the series of Swedish Fika beers that have been done between Poppels and Evil Twin. The last one actually, I've actually still got the bottle here. This one had coffee, vanilla, cocoa nibs, hazelnuts, arak and badere added to it. So this one was a little bit different actually. I very nearly didn't get this beer because I actually thought it was just, you know, a rebrew of the same one, but I'm glad that I did have a look at it more closely, and I thought that doesn't sound quite the same. But that other one was very good, and hopefully this is another one that follows in the same footsteps as that. But both very good breweries within their own right, and I'm sure this will be another really interesting beer. So I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Poppels Bryggeri and from Evil Twin Brewing. No doubt there'll be more added to both of those in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for the Swedish beers, the Danish beers and the American beers. This beer will appear in all three of those because it is kinda to do with all three of those countries, we should say. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about the breweries, and we'll start off with Poppels Bryggeri then, since these guys are the home brewery. So Poppels Bryggeri were originally based in the town of Mölnlycke to the southeast of Gothenburg, but they're now based a little bit to the northeast of the city of Gothenburg in a place called Jonserad. So this brewery is named after that which was owned by Johan Poppel, who was a well-known German-Swedish brewer who spent most of his life in Varberg and Gothenburg, but he was born between 1605 and 1610 in Lower Saxony. I think Saxon-Anhalt that would be called in German, but he moved to Sweden with his family in the 1620s, and he met his wife Katarina Krakow between 1624 and 1628, and later founded Gothenburg's first brewery with her officially in the year 1649, but it's thought they had been brewing since 10 years previously in 1638. But he's also said to have written down the protocol of the city of Gothenburg in Swedish for the first time as opposed to German. But this brewery apparently remained in the Poppel family for quite a long time, and the most famous site of this brewery in Gothenburg was at Stigbergstorget, and you might recognise that name of course because there is Stigbergets Brewery in Gothenburg as well, which is a very good IPA brewery. But this current incarnation of the brewery was founded back in 2012 in Mölnlycke on a site that was apparently owned by the Poppel family. But the brewery is owned by 15 beer lovers, and they aim to focus on pairing beers with different types of food and things like that, and you will actually find little tasting notes on the side of their regular beers if you like. The current head brewer is Daniel Granat, who's a bit of an experimenter, apparently quite a perfectionist as well, and he brews most of his new beers 4 or 5 times before actually clearing them to be released out to the public. So yeah, very kind of perfectionist and anal with these different recipes, but it usually works out pretty well for them, I have to say. But apparently he also reads many beer blogs and keeps up to date with all the new beers and yeasts and hops and all of these kind of things, all the different current brewing events and stuff like this. But in 2015 they moved to their new site in Jonserad, which is out to the kind of northeast-ish of Gothenburg, and this has a restaurant and a shop, and they now also boast the title of Sweden's largest organic beer producer as well. So quite a well respected brewery, this one, I guess you could say. One of the bigger volume producers of craft beer here in Sweden as well, and I think one of the first ones actually to start exporting too. I think you can get the Poppels beers over in the US and things like that now as well. But yeah, quite cool that they're the largest organic producer of beer in Sweden too. That's quite an interesting title to have, actually. But the double IPA that they do is very nice. The Russian Imperial Stout is also a very good beer. They have their Project series, which always throws out some very, very interesting things. So if you come across some of these Poppels Project beers, I would really recommend that you try those. And if they do go well, they tend to release them as a kind of core beer, if you like. That's what happened with the double IPA and the Russian Imperial Stout. So yeah, those are probably the two best beers I've had from Poppels so far. So if you get the chance to try some of their beers, I highly recommend that you do. But that's all you really need to know about Poppels Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below, and of course you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram. That'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on, and the Rate Beer and Untappd pages will tell you about all the different types of beers that they've done. So yeah, let's go on to Evil Twin then, the Danish-American side of this beer. So Evil Twin Brewing, as I've told you before, is a Danish gypsy brewery that was founded by Jeppe Jarnet Bjergso, who of course is the twin brother of Mikael Bjergso. And the company was founded back in 2010, and it was largely inspired again by the lack of craft beer in Denmark at that time, but of course it's changed days over there now. But Jeppe began home brewing in the same beer group that gave birth to Mikael, and he went on to found his own beer shop, which was called Ølbutikken in Copenhagen. That is now closed, but for a long time that was a very good place to go if you wanted some American beers and things. But he also started an import business that was attached to the shop, and this was used to bring the American beers into Denmark, and he was also selling the very early Mikkeller beers as well as his own things as well. But he later decided that it would be fun to sell his own beers in the shop, and he agreed an import deal as a result of that, with 12% imports to send his beers over to America, and he later moved over there with his wife in 2012, basing the company's head offices in Brooklyn in New York. But today they are still a gypsy brewery. Quite a lot of their beer is brewed in Connecticut from what I remember. I think there's a few other places around New England that they brew their beers as well. I'm not sure if they're brewing some of their beers at the Mikkeller facilities in New York and San Diego as well, actually. I don't know, I've heard mixed things about how well he actually gets on with his brother, basically. But they brew a good number of their beers here in Sweden with Poppels Bryggeri. They brew a good number of them in Connecticut, as I mentioned, and a few of the rest of them are dotted around in different places. But the majority of them are brewed over in the US, I think, in places like North Carolina, Connecticut. I've seen a few in Maryland or Virginia, actually. They've been brewed around there as well. But basically a Danish gypsy brewery that moved over to America, and they produce some pretty damn good beers as well. The Molotov Heavy is a really nice double IPA. The Even More Jesus is one. I've tried a few different versions of that, but never the original. That's one that I really want to review for you on the channel at some point too. But they're very good at Imperial Stouts, and they're very good when it comes to the kind of West Coast IPAs as well. I don't think I've actually ever had a New England Hazy IPA from Evil Twin Brewing yet, so that's something that I definitely need to look into as well. But if you haven't tried these guys already, then you really need to. Probably one of the, along with Mikkeller, these guys are probably one of the best known gypsy brewers in the world. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Evil Twin Brewing for the moment. Again, you can check out the website and the brewery in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And if you're interested in all the different beers that they do, you can check out the website, which has quite an extensive list of them. And of course, you can look at the Rate Beer and Untappd pages once again. But yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself and see how we get on. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork again before we open this one up. You can see the artwork to this one is a little bit different from the original Swedish Fika that there was. So just a few different changes to the badges and things there. Poppels Bryggeri have changed their badges a little bit. But like I said to you at the start of the video, this one is a 12% Imperial Stout with coffee, vanilla, cinnamon and cardamom added. Of course, it takes its inspiration from Swedish kanelbullar, the Swedish cinnamon buns. It says on the side here, this Russian Imperial Stout is a tribute to one of the most fantastic Swedish traditions, Fika. Fika is a social phenomenon that has a fantastic history of bringing people together and is a crucial activity in Swedish social life. To Fika means that you have a cup of coffee with a biscuit, a cinnamon bun, a piece of cake or any other pastry. While having this, you talk and laugh together with friends, family, colleagues, a date or someone you are trying to get to know. It's not just a cup of coffee, it is a Fika, produced and bottled for Evil Twin Brewery at Poppels Bryggeri in Sweden. So yeah, you can see Poppels bottle cap on this one. One of the things that the Poppels beers of course are quite distinctive for is these little stubby bottles that they come in. But yeah, really nicely presented, this one. As I said, the main difference between this one is a few of the adjuncts that they've added to the beer. So this one, from the last time, from that would have been 2018, this one had coffee, vanilla, cocoa nibs, hazelnuts, arak and badere added to it. Arak is a Swedish spirit, if I remember correctly, based on brown sugar, and badere is a special type of biscuit that you'll only find produced on a very small scale in Gothenburg, actually. I think they only produce them once a year or something like that, whereas this one is cinnamon and cardamom. So yeah, I wonder if they'll do another one of these next year. I need to keep an eye out for that. Like I said, I very nearly didn't buy this one because I just thought it was a rebrew of the one before that, but I'm glad I looked at it more closely and picked it up. But like I say, released on the 4th of October 2019 through the small partiers in Systembolaget. But let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So, the glass bottle on this one is a little bit, that's weird. It's got, if you look at the edge of that, you can see there's a little bit of, I don't know if that's a grip or if the bottle cap's been put on a bit too tightly or something. That's kind of unusual actually. But let's get the beer out and into the glass anyway. So, yeah. Not much of a head on this one. I'll stir it up a little bit and see what we get. There you are. So yeah, as you would kind of expect from an Imperial Stout, this one has poured a lovely, dark, ebony, rosewood colour actually. If I hold it up to the light, there's very little light coming through that. It has a very, very slight kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it, but mainly this one is a big, dark, ebony, rosewood colour. There's a solid third finger, maybe a quarter finger, of a quite dark tan head on there. One or two little big bubbles sticking towards the big side, the side of the glass there. And one or two little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head. But you know, overall, it looks pretty much as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, regardless of what type it is, a Russian Imperial Stout or otherwise. It looks pretty damn good actually, and you know, very similar to other ones that you're going to come across, but a nice dark head on that. So nothing surprising about its appearance. Let's have a little look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. Oh yeah, straight away with this beer, you can really smell the cinnamon and the cardamom punching their way out. That I think the cardamom is more prominent in it. In fairness though, cardamom to me is a lot more pungent than cinnamon is. Cardamom isn't something that I have all that often. It's kind of, cardamom always reminds me a little bit of marzipan. I always find it a little bit more kind of pungent, but you can really smell the sort of spicy qualities to this. But the more, you'll find that when you first go into this beer, the cardamom is very, very pungent, but then as your nose adjusts to it, it's the cinnamon and the brown sugars that kind of mix together. It really does smell like cinnamon buns, this. I was sure I had read about this one that they'd actually just chucked cinnamon buns in the brew with this, and I wouldn't have been surprised if they did that. It probably would have been quite an authentic way to kind of infuse the flavour of the beer. But it smells really nice, that. It really does smell like kanelbullar. Absolutely love my kanelbullar. I mean, it's kind of interesting that before I came to Sweden I was never into licorice, and I really got into licorice over here, and I was never that into cinnamon either, but then I had the cinnamon buns, and you know what, that all changed too. The other ones, the other wondrous Swedish invention, if you like, though, is kebab pizza. You know, I absolutely love that stuff now. So yeah, Sweden has changed my my diet a little bit. Although in fairness, I don't really eat, I like cinnamon buns every so often, but I don't have them all that often. I don't really drink coffee either, so I like going to Fika and just sitting and chatting to people, but I don't tend to drink coffee, so I'm not the greatest practitioner of of Fika that you're going to find in Sweden. It's always 10 o'clock that you go. It was the same in Germany when I was there too. They had their German Fika, or whatever they called it. But that smells absolutely lovely. It's interesting, this beer. It really leans towards that kind of spicy side of things, though the cinnamon and the cardamom are the things that will jump out of the aroma at you. A lovely little bit of brown sugar in there. Quite it's in some ways it's quite a toasted brown sugar. In some ways it's quite sort of kind of oily and molassesy, if that makes sense. It's really kind of unusual, actually. I don't get too much in the way of vanilla, to be honest. There is a little bit of it there. You can smell it towards the front of the nose, but it's kind of, to be honest, it is kind of dominated a little bit by the cardamom and the cinnamon that's in here. You don't get too much of it. There is a little bit of a kind of woody undertone to this beer, maybe a little bit of nuttiness as well. I'm not getting much in the way of coffee either, which is interesting. I mean, the cinnamon and the cardamom really do dominate it. And I mean, if you add coffee beans to a beer, I've had coffee IBAs, for example, from Overtone Brewing back in Glasgow. I've had a few coffee imperial stouts. Swedish Bryggeri in Sweden are very, very good at that, of course, also from Gothenburg. But you don't get too much of the coffee there. The coffee beans can add such a level of complexity to a beer, but I think that in terms of the aroma, the cardamom and the cinnamon really are just dominating. There is a little bit of chocolate in there, quite a high cocoa chocolate, 80-90%, something like that. You get a bit of earthiness from the hops. There's not much in the way of a fruitiness coming out of this. You do get a little bit of a sort of, there is a little bit of a kind of blackcurranty, blackberry, maybe very slightly figgy note coming out of this beer. But really, it is very much dominated by the cinnamon, a bit of brown sugars. The cardamom really pushes its way out, and you've also got those little undertones of vanilla, wood, and other things in there too. But I mean, overall, it's a really quite nice smelling beer. That it's quite unusual for an imperial stout, this, compared to other ones that you're going to come across. So do take a little bit of time and pay special attention to the aroma in this one, but it is really pretty nice, actually. So just take a bit of time and enjoy it for yourself. But let's have a taste of this beer now and see how we get on. This one is the Swedish Fika Biscotti Break Cinnamon Bun from Poppels Bryggeri in Jonserad near Gothenburg here in Sweden, and Evil Twin Brewing, of course, the Danish-American gypsy brewer, now based over in Brooklyn, New York, but originally from Copenhagen. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, a Russian Imperial Stout at 12% ABV, coffee, vanilla, cinnamon and cardamom added. Slange, skål. Oh yeah, right. That's really pretty nice, actually. It does come across considerably differently in the flavour compared to what you would expect in the aroma. You were expecting, from the aroma, you do expect something that's going to be quite spicy and toasty and stuff, but in the flavour, it is actually pretty damn sweet, I have to say. So bear that in mind when you try this one. But yeah, that's really good. I mean, it's a very kind of infused flavour, this. It's almost, the way the flavours come out in this one, it's almost kind of akin to what you would expect of, say, like a Scotch whisky barrel-aged beer, or a rum, no, not rum barrel, it's too thick in its mouthfeel to be rum barrel, like a bourbon barrel-aged beer as well. It really has, the way all of these flavours are going together is very, very kind of infused, if you like. I'd be curious to know whether it is actually, you know, cinnamon, vanilla and things like that, or if it's flavour essence. I think the way it's coming out, it probably is original rather than flavour essence. I know a couple of the breweries, such as Omnipollo and things like that, they often like to add the flavour essence to the beer rather than putting the original ingredients in. That's how they get a lot of these kind of things out of it. But it's very, very nice, this. So if you get the chance to try this one, definitely have a go at it. In terms of the flavour then, let's try and break this down a little bit. So straight across the middle of your palate, it definitely has this very smooth base to the beer. I mean, The further you go into the aftertaste, you can pick up a little bit of the roasty qualities to this beer. You can definitely feel the kind of coffee beans there. They're giving you this very roasty, toasty note in the malt base, but it also has a ridiculously good smoothness to it, if that makes sense. It feels very, very infused. If you go to the front corners of your palate, then go in a little bit, it's almost as if it's kind of woody, and that's where I was getting the sort of barrel-aged thing with this beer a little bit. And it's more the mouthfeel rather than the way that the flavour go together, in fairness, the more that I think about it. But very, very smooth, almost woody coffee bean base. That's what blankets the middle of your tongue in this. On top of that, though, you can feel the sort of cinnamon qualities, and it's almost a bit bready as well. I mean, a cinnamon bun is quite bready, sort of cakey kind of thing, and you get that all the way across the middle of your palate too. The cardamom, I think, comes out a little bit more towards the centre of your palate, but it's almost just as if it's a little bit more kind of concentrated, I think. Pardon me. There is a little bit of brown sugar in the middle of your palate, and it's actually a little bit like a kind of sugar caney almost. It's almost a little bit like rum kind of thing, caramel wafery, rummy type flavour that's in the middle of the palate. I think rum isn't quite accurate, probably more sugar caney. More sugar caney kind of caramel wafer. Yeah, I would say that the brown sugar kind of sits right in the middle of your palate. I mean, at 12%, this beer is a bit of a beast, but it covers its alcohol very, very well. You're not going to notice much booziness out of this one at all, in fairness, but I think that's just because of how prominent the adjuncts are in the flavour. Like I say, the cinnamon takes over the whole tongue, and the cardamom comes out a little bit more towards the centre of the palate. That's really, really nice how that goes together. Actually, I really like it. If you go to the centre of the palate, then move forward a little bit, you can pick up where the vanilla is. The vanilla for me is very subtle in this beer, but if you just go to the centre of your palate and then push forward a little bit, the vanilla flavours just kind of sit there underneath the sort of coffee bean and cinnamony notes. They're quite, the vanilla for me really is very subtle in this one, to be honest, and I think most of the vanilla flavour you're going to get in a Kanelbuller anyway is kind of, it's infused into the bread, whereas the cinnamon is like the paste that goes into the kind of swirl of it, in fairness. So that kind of suits it a little bit. The vanilla should be a little bit less prominent, if you like, and it is. It really works out quite well. There is a little bit of a chocolatey quality to this one, and to be honest, you only really notice that in the aftertaste. It's kind of along the lines of an 80-90% cocoa chocolate, but it's very dispersed, like it's very infused kind of across the whole of your palate, if that makes sense. That's a very kind of abstract way to describe it, if you like, but to me that's kind of how it comes across. This beer really is, it's all about the malt base and how the malts and the adjuncts are interacting in this beer, but it comes across really pretty nicely. It's one of these beers that you have to sit and think about a little bit. It takes you a little while just to get your head around what's going on in this one, but it's a lovely beer, so make no mistake about it. Have a go at this one and see what you think for yourself. This is very, very nice. Yeah. It really is. It really is nice, that. I'd be curious to know how they brew this. I mean, is it a double mash? Is it a triple mash? Something like that. And of course, you'll need to have quite a pretty hefty yeast to do this. Otherwise, you'll need to ferment it a couple of times to get the alcohol content up and things like that. I'd be interested to have a go at brewing one of these kind of things for myself, actually. I'd be curious to, I need to research that a little bit more. I've not brewed too many in the way of imperial stouts and things. But the way the malt base and stuff goes together in this one is really nice. I was talking about the vanilla flavours earlier as well, and the more you go into the aftertaste, you can feel the cardamom. I think the cinnamon lingers there, but the cardamom starts to push its way out more, and that sits in the middle of your palate. And you've also got the woody notes just kind of sitting there as well. Some of the vanilla pushes its way out as well. It really is just nice how that whole flavour goes together. On the hoppy side of things, it's quite interesting. There's not too much of a hoppy presence to this beer. Back corners of the palate, you'll pick up a little bit of the earthiness. It's the same kind of level, if you like, as you would expect from, say, you know, a Pilsner or something like that. I mean, the hoppiness in this beer is really not very apparent at all. I mean, The other one that it reminds me of is like a triple. Triples tend to not have too much, triples and quadruples, the Belgian beers don't tend to have much of a hoppy presence to them, but you do get a little touch of earthiness in the back corners of your palate. As you come further forward, you can pick up just a little bit of, there is a very slight floral character on the front corners of the palate, and then round the very front curve of the tongue it's just that a little bit lighter and more grassy and things like that. But the hoppy presence in this beer is pretty minimal. I'm sure there's just a little bit of it there, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a German noble hop or one of the very low alpha acid English hops that they've used in this one. I don't know, maybe Kent Goldings or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something like that in here, but in fairness it doesn't have quite the same herbal quality that you would expect from an English hop. It might just be an American, sorry, might just be a low alpha acid American hop in fairness. But the way that the fruits come across in this one, Bramling's Cross actually could be another one that's in here in fairness, but the way that it comes out, the hoppy character that's in there suits the rest of the beer quite well. And I mean, when it's named as it is, the focus will be on the malts and the adjuncts that are in here. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, it comes in a little tad sharp, and there is a little bit of a, you know, if you push further forward on the note here, I mean the whole point of this beer is about Kanelbuller, which technically, I don't know if you can technically describe it as a cake. There is a cakey element to this beer just behind that oily bubble where the fruity esters come out, and in the beginning the beer starts off quite sharp. It's got a little bit, I don't know if it's quite cherryish, but it's definitely got a bit of a sharper kind of plummy, I think more plummy to be honest. It's got a nice plummy sharpness in the beginning, but then it just rolls out, and the further you go into the aftertaste, the fruity notes start to become a little bit more kind of medicinal, like blackcurranty, blackberries, a little bit of a figgy kind of note in there as well. But definitely there's a sort of cake within that fruity bubble that you have at the front of your tongue. It's quite cakey at the same time, and it's kind of phenolic, like almost cough syrupy a little bit. It reminds me in some ways of some of the fruity notes you'll get out of a Belgian Brewed, for example. The quadruples of course are very juicy and sweet, but the Brewed beers I found were always a little bit more kind of phenolic and things like that actually. So there's a hell of a lot of stuff going on in this beer, and it's all about how these flavours kind of merged together. There's a great level of complexity in this beer, and it really is pretty nice actually. The further you go into the aftertaste, the more it's going to start to lean towards those nice kind of coffee notes. As I said earlier, coffee is a really interesting note to add to beer. It's all about, for coffee beans, it's all about the height above sea level at which it's grown. And for me, the coffee in this one has a very nice smooth roastiness, but I think in some ways as well the coffee is quite aromatic, because you can feel there's a little bit of an almost astringent quality in the middle of your palate too, and that coffee smoothness just almost just like punches its way out of the beer and becomes a bit more sort of floral and aromatic the further you go into the aftertaste too. So it's almost a little touch citrusy, which is kind of interesting. So there is a little bit of a citrusy quality to the coffee in here as well. So pay attention to that. The more that you drink of the beer, the more your palate will adjust to the flavours in this one, and you'll start to get other things out of it as well. But for me, this is another very, very nice Imperial Stout. Do I like this better than the original one? That's a very, very hard question. I think it kind of depends what you want. I think the original one was a little bit more kind of sweet, if you like, whereas this one's a little bit more kind of spicy and things, and it really just depends. I think probably if push came to shove, I would probably choose the original one, but this is still a very, very nice beer. But it's, you know, beer is subjective. I prefer my Imperial Stouts to be a little bit kind of sweeter and things, whereas this one really is quite adjuncty and almost spicy in the way that the adjuncts go. For me, I like more kind of sweet adjuncts, to be honest with you. The cardamom is quite prominent in this one, but take nothing away from this beer, it really is pretty damn nice, and it really does taste like Kanelbuller actually, but you will notice that there is a bit of a freshness to this beer that you don't quite often get with the Kanelbuller themselves. That's the one kind of quirk that this beer has. The cardamom, I think, is giving the beer just this little bit of freshness. It's almost a little bit, it reminds me of the kind of freshness you get from toothpaste, if you like, that this beer has, although there's no minty presence to this beer. Hope that kind of makes sense. But a really interesting beer, this one, and one that has definitely made me think a little bit. In terms of the mouthfeel, definitely a full-bodied beer. Yeah. carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. Full-bodied, smooth carbonation. Quite oily, but then again, it's not the thickest of imperial stouts that you're going to come across. It's got a nice oily character, but at the same time it's complemented well with wetness. The malt base is really well balanced. There's some roasty notes in there from the coffee, you've got some smoothness from the coffee as well, but you've also got a little bit of sweetness and that kind of thicker cakey quality that the beer has. You've got a little bit of sharpness in this beer from the beginning, from the fruity notes as well, but the fruits do gradually get more juicy the further you go into the aftertaste. So sharpness in the beginning, juicy later on from the fruits, and the hops are just very kind of smooth and quite light in this one in my opinion. But overall, a really, really nice beer, quite a quirky one rather than anything else. So definitely have a go at this beer for yourself and just see what you think. It's really very unusual, this one. I mean, it wasn't too expensive either. I think I paid about 55 Swedish crowns for this, which is, what, that's just short of £5 or something. You'll probably pay more than that for it in the UK and in Germany and places like this because of import fees, and of course we've got socialised alcohol here through Systembolaget. Awesome. So this one will be a little bit more expensive, but it's definitely worth trying just for the kind of quirky factor rather than anything else. But big thumbs up both to Poppels and to Evil Twin for this. They've pulled off something that I think is quite unusual. A little bit of a longer review for you then, this one, but I think that was needed just to get my head around this beer a little bit, but let's leave it at that for this one. So this one was the Swedish Fika Cinnamon Bun from Poppels Bryggeri in Jonserad near Gothenburg here in Sweden, and Evil Twin Brewing, originally from Copenhagen but now based in Brooklyn over in New York. A really nice beer, this one, and definitely worth trying out. Quite a spicy imperial stout this, so if that sounds like it ticks the boxes for you, then I'm sure you will enjoy this one. Two very good breweries involved here, and they've produced a rather quirky beer just to sum up the review. But thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Evil Twin and from Poppels Bryggeri as well. I'm sure I'll return to both of these breweries at some point in the near future, but thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Swedish Fika Cinnamon Bun, a 12% Imperial Stout from Poppels and Evil Twin. Until the next time, it's Lange just now, and I'll catch you guys soon. Make sure you check out this beer, and I'll see you later. Cheers!